Thank you, everyone, for being here today. As you know, we had an accident on one of our school buses, probably one of the most challenging situations we ever face in a school district is when you have students who are injured while at school or while certainly being transported on school buses. I want to just say, while we're fortunate that there are no serious injuries, we certainly in no way downplay the fact that we did have students who are injured, and certainly we continue to monitor their condition and reach out to parents to make sure that anything we can do to support them during these challenging times that we certainly are available to do so. Just to recount the incident on Tuesday, November 17th at approximately 3:20 p.m. in the afternoon, a 9R bus we refer to as DW2 Durango West number 2 was involved in an accident that happened at the 900 block of County Road 207, which is also known as Lightner Creek. The bus went off the side of the road while carrying approximately 40 students, I believe 42 students to be exact. Police and fire responded to the scene really within minutes. We had an off-duty fire official who was nearby and got to the scene very quickly. 10 riders and the driver were all transported by ambulance to the hospital, to Mercy Hospital, to further assess and treat injuries that were sustained. We also transported the remaining students. We had a couple of students who were picked up by parents at the scene, but we had a majority of our remaining students who actually were transported to the hospital on another school bus. In addition, the 10 transported 6 additional students once we got them to the hospital were further treated. One of the challenges that we have in an accident like this is while they may not present as injured initially, our call to do parent reunification at the hospital was to make sure that we had no other students who after some time began to present injuries, and in this case we had 6 additional students once we got them to the hospital who were also treated in the emergency room. We've also had other students who since the accident have been taken to the hospital by parents for further evaluation, and that is something we've encouraged parents to do. During the investigation, which included a review of the bus footage, we have cameras on all of our buses, the driver history and training, and our response to the accident. We found there's certainly a need for us to review our student code of conduct policies as they pertain to our bus. The footage revealed that there were screams from the back of the bus just after leaving a previous stop prior to the accident. The driver had just pulled away from the stop where he had dropped off 3 students. The driver, upon hearing the screams, looked into his rearview mirror and reached for his whistle, something that this driver does to get the attention of students. It was at that time that the bus appeared to pull to the right and slide off the side of the road. One of the things that's important to note for those of you who are familiar or aren't familiar with the area is it is a very narrow road, and this is no different than many roads that we travel in La Plata County. We drive 2,075 miles every day, over a 500,000 miles annually in our school buses, and we're very fortunate to have very few incidents that actually occur. But you can see from the pictures that there is no shoulder on that road. In fact, in some cases, the shoulder is deteriorating, which certainly makes it quite challenging. The bus actually slid down the hill for quite a distance and then hit another drop-off, at which time that it did do one complete roll. Everyone always questions about mechanical issues. The bus had undergone an inspection on the Tuesday prior to the accident. We inspect our buses regularly according to Colorado Department of Education guidelines, and that bus passed its inspections with no mechanical issues. Again, with the apparent distraction caused by student behavior on the bus, we'll immediately begin to implement some new policies and procedures to ensure that we emphasize how important it is to keep our kids safe while on the road. Certainly, drivers have the responsibility to avoid those distractions, but we certainly want to make sure that we create a very safe environment on all of our buses. I've met with the driver on 2 different occasions now. He has given me written permission to share some personal information about him. Mr. Farley came to us with a prior commercial driver's license. He had driven since 2007 for a local company that delivers oxygen. He's driven large tractor trailers and has a driving record with no previous accidents prior to joining the 9R team. All of our drivers go through a pretty extensive driving experience. They not only receive classroom instruction on managing a school bus, they also receive mentor training. They're evaluated. This particular driver was evaluated 8 separate times while driving to ensure that he adhered to all safety rules and regulations. And then they obviously also have to pass a CDE exam that also includes some on-the-road driving evaluation. Driver history also reveals that during the training of this driver, again keeping in mind that this driver came to us with no accident background, did, while he was in town, driving near one of our schools, clip a light pole. There's been some report of a prior accident. That driver did make a sharp turn and clipped a light pole. Prior to that, our policy is that we extend the training so that driver, while he may have been started a regular route prior to when he did, that driving training was extended by an additional 5 days, at which time there was no other concern noted. We will be evaluating that practice to ensure that we still feel that that's an appropriate step. Again, this driver came to us with pretty extensive driving background, and accidents like that that are minor, that don't involve any injuries, sometimes do occur. And so we recognize that that may be a question that we'll need to answer for our families as to whether that is how we'll continue to address that in the future. While one might jump to conclusions again about that, I think the key is we go through pretty strong scrutiny when we have applicants. As everyone knows, we've been very open that we're short drivers, and we've had routes that have been impacted by a lack of drivers. But we also get a lot of applicants that we turn down because of driving records and because of reference checks. And so it is important that we emphasize that we look for high-quality individuals to become bus drivers. And this individual driver in particular certainly had all of that in his background. That driver is currently on leave pending the results of my investigation. In both of my meetings, he's expressed strong remorse and concern for students. He's certainly very concerned about the children who were involved. I can tell you that reviewing the video footage from the bus, that this driver acted with noteworthy professionalism after the accident. He too was injured, and yet immediately began tending to the injuries of the students, assessing them, and trying to comfort them. He even was seen in the video putting Band-Aids on some students, and we know that with young students in particular, a Band-Aid seems to make people feel better. And so again, we were fortunate to have a driver who, even in a shock of going through an accident like that, immediately responded to the needs of the students while we awaited emergency services to arrive. I do want to note that our policy as a district is that any accident results immediately in a drug and alcohol assessment of the driver, whether it is their fault or not. It is important to us that we be able to be very transparent, that we have very high expectations for our driver. This particular incident showed that there was no alcohol or substance abuse involved in the accident. A new driver has been assigned to the route, and we're hoping that we can begin to re-engage students. We know that this is a really challenging experience, and so to have students who have gone through an accident like this, we know that getting right back on the bus may be really challenging. And so we're going to continue to work with families who wish to utilize bus transportation. We've had many families who have rallied together to do carpooling in the meantime to make sure that children are getting to school and remain engaged in school, and we certainly appreciate that. I want to emphasize the importance of the safety of a school bus. School bus is probably the safest vehicle on the road today. When you think about 42 students in a bus that did a complete rollover, to have as few injuries as we did, and again, not the severe or not as severe of injuries as might have occurred, is really remarkable. National Highway Safety Administration does recommend that school buses do not have seat belts. If you think about a massive evacuation of a bus, having 70 certainly young students strapped in is going to make it quite challenging. Buses are compartmentalized so that they're reinforced. Our particular bus that rolled on this particular event actually started and was able to drive. We did tow it out of precaution, but the bus was able to actually start up and drive. The integrity of the bus was pretty remarkable. Again, we're beginning a phase right now of rebuilding trust with our families. We will host a meeting for families of students on that bus this evening. We will hold public meetings in the next couple of weeks to address any concerns that other parents may have regarding transportation or rules or regulations of the district. Again, we want to ensure that families who feel the need for counseling or medical attention continue to reach out for that. Our insurance carrier, the Colorado School District Self-Insurance Pool, has reached out to all of our children who were on the bus to ensure that they're recovering well and that no additional services are needed. All of those medical costs will be covered by the insurance carrier. Again, we stand ready to support our families as we move forward. I just want to really emphasize how much we appreciate the support of our emergency responders. We have drilled many times jointly to prepare for a crisis, and I can tell you that that clearly paid off in this particular incident. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out today. On behalf of the 9R Board of Education, we'd like to express our heartfelt condolences and thoughts and concerns to families that are impacted, both directly and indirectly impacted by this. I think the strength of an organization can be felt by how an organization responds. I'm confident that Superintendent Snowberger and his team are identifying policies and procedures and support mechanisms to help us move forward and move beyond this and make sure that we have a better school district for all of our community. We're proud of our community and the response that followed the incident on Tuesday. Perhaps even more so, we're proud of our students who were on the bus that day and displayed calm, mindfulness, and responsibility in what was a very stressful situation for them. Many of the responders complimented our students on their resiliency, compassion, and calm demeanor. Over the next several weeks, we'll continue to work with our families and students to train around emergency response issues, and we encourage you to support these measures, family members, community members, teachers, district staff, knowing that these are in the best interests of student safety and the guidelines that we're providing to all districts from emergency response experts from around the country. As we reflect upon the incident on Tuesday, I think it's important to note that we regularly drill with multiple agencies in the region to be prepared for situations like this. I'd like to appreciate the police department, the fire and rescue department, and all others that were involved with the situation on Tuesday. Without that collaboration and partnership, we would not be where we are as a community today. Their response was fast, appropriate, and well managed, so we appreciate that. It is unfortunate that incidents like this occur, and they will occur in the future throughout our state and our country, but I'm confident that we will provide the support mechanisms for our students and our community members that are affected by this, again, directly and indirectly, for as long as they need. As Dan had mentioned, there were a couple opportunities, starting with the session tonight, by those directly impacted by it. We encourage people to attend as appropriate. From a board perspective, we encourage community members to share their thoughts and concerns with us, and we encourage parents to stay engaged with us if they have any needs, both now and into the future. We meet on a regular basis as a board. We welcome individuals to come to us. We're also available via email, individual meetings, and phone. Thank you.
Thank you. My presence here is just in support, really, of the 9R School District. the transportation section, and just to reiterate how much work has gone in this community into preparing for an event like this. And I think that probably one of the most important things that comes to mind is that none of us want to see anything like this happen, but it's incredibly powerful when you've got a community and a response force in the area that's been well-trained and has practiced this. Coming to mind as the other gentleman spoke, I was thinking about the hours upon hours that we spent with active shooter drills, with other types of drills, and I think some of the successes in this case were characterized by the fact that within an hour's time after the accident, all the children that were involved in the incident were transported to the hospital. I think that that's a really strong indication of the preparedness level that we maintain. I think also the ability to quickly and functionally set up a reunification center so that we could manage those parents that were having a crisis also because they found that their children were involved in this was really well handled, and I think that's a direct result of the preparations that we made. So I'll remain on site as long as anybody wants to talk to me. Be glad to answer questions at the end. And as I said, our agency was responsible for transporting the students, fire, and the EMS response. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. My role in this whole thing is also in support of the school district, in support of the fire department. Chief Dowdy's absolutely correct. We've drilled this many times, and showing up on scene, this is a worst case scenario as a law enforcement officer when you get the call that you have a school bus rollover. So having faces on scene that we all know and trust, that really helped out in this particular instance. My second reason for being here is we were the investigating agency on the scene. And as I've released to the media before, Mr. Farley was cited for careless driving caused bodily injury, which basically means that he was driving without due regard for road conditions, widths. There's a whole lot involved in that statute. I will tell everybody that is a summons into court, so he will have a court appearance forthcoming. It's not a penalty assessment where he can plead guilty and just pay the fine and then be off with everything. So he will have his day in court, and we're preparing for that. The investigation is complete. We have provided a written accident report, which should be available here in the next couple of days. It's completed, it just hasn't been approved by the sergeant. So the report is finished. We will provide copies, obviously, to the school district, fire department, media, anybody else that requests copies of that, those will be granted. So just want to let you know a time frame on that. Within the next couple of days, that should be available to all of you. So like Chief Dowdy said, I will be here to answer questions about any concerns or comments that you have. But for worst case scenario, I think everything turned out really, really well. Minor injuries, when we get on scene, we're basically looking at an initial triage by paramedics. They go through and they look at all the kids and they make a general determination as to what their injuries are. We're not doctors, so there were some concerns about that. We reported it was minor injury when some of it actually turned out to be on the more moderate side. But we like to report what we see on the scene, and also to give the parents and the school district and everybody else involved a picture of what's going on in the scene, since there was limited access. So I, once again, I feel very confident that us as a community can handle a crisis like this. It's very unfortunate, and like I said, it's the worst case scenario for a first responder to get that call, and I think we handled it very, very well as a community. We ask for your support in that too, and we look forward to working with the school district to there are some problems that we found that we need to work on, and we're looking forward to working with the district as well. So thank you for coming, and I'm available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Bus primarily, actually totally transported only students from Park Elementary School, so they were all elementary students, age 5 through 11.
Has that route not been running since the incident on Tuesday?
The route has been running. We have a new bus driver assigned, and so the bus continues to run. Some families have chosen not to utilize that route, understandably so, after a crisis like this, but the route is definitely still running. There were many students who usually ride that were not on the route on that given day.
Do you know how many families are choosing no longer to put their students on the bus?
I don't have an exact number. I know we've gotten some calls even today about families who are ready to re-engage and asking about, is the service continuing and any change in time. So we have families that even today are starting to ride back for the first time since the accident.
You mentioned that this is possibly a distraction from students, and you mentioned that there could be change in policies. Are there any action against those students in particular?
You know, I think it's important for us to use this as a learning experience. Certainly, we want every bus to be a safe environment for students, and so in no way do I want to say there's blame on the part of students. I think we're looking at the situation in its totality to make sure that we support our drivers and that we support our kids. We want our kids to be safe, and so in this particular case, it was clear that to us at least, I'm not the law enforcement official by any means, but to us, that there was a distraction that occurred right before the accident, and so with that, we definitely are wanting to make sure that we address that on all of our bus routes, not just this particular one.
I have a question for the State Patrol. How much did the condition of the road play in the accident? Because, as we know, the county just lost a mill levy ballot issue that would have added shoulders and bike lanes to roads, just like Lightning Creek.
Well, certainly in this particular case, road condition we feel had very little impact in this particular accident. There was no ice on the road; it was completely dry. But with that said, there's always improvements that you could make on roads. As the pictures show, that roadside is kind of fallen off a little bit. So certainly we would like to see wider roads, bike lanes. We're very supportive of the cycling public here in Durango. So anytime that you can have a wider road, it would probably be better. But I'm not going to blame the road for this particular incident.
Okay. But if he had just swerved and he had at least a shoulder, then he might have had an opportunity to recover, couldn't he?
I'm not going to speak to that. I wasn't there. I don't know what the condition was going that he was in at the time. I can't speak for the driver. But anytime that you have a wider road, there is an opportunity to recover quicker and better. But in this particular case, I can't comment on that.
Can I have a follow-up with the superintendent, if I may, from an online viewer? People that live on the road question the quality of the road, and that's a county issue. Sure. However, it is a school issue whether or not a school bus actually travels that road. Correct. I understand, and I can't confirm this, but I understand that this route was actually added within the last year. How does road condition come into play when choosing routes? And the online viewers are asking, should they be continuing on this road today?
Right. This road has been driven for quite a while. It's not a very recent route. There's the stop right before the accident scene is a trailer park that I know that at this particular time we dropped off 3 students at that stop. So the route has been continuing. We have a number of areas that were requested to travel that we won't because the road conditions are even worse. In this case, it is a paved road. In some cases, we get dirt roads that are not maintained, and therefore we have to arrange for stops at a further distance from the location. I think one of the things we continue to do is get feedback from our drivers and from our transportation department as to concerns around roads and whether we can continue to travel them. This particular road in question, I think, is certainly one we'll have to look at further. Obviously, that's part of our continuing work now in the aftermath is determine is this a road that we feel like we should continue to travel. Again, as Captain Driscoll said, the road is certainly not the cause of it, but certainly the road in its deteriorating condition may cause us to reevaluate.
I know you said that this particular driver had no past incidents reported in terms of his driving, but had you heard from parents in the past before about anything reported, like?
No, we actually reported to parents when the light pole was clipped. That, again, our standard operating procedure is in any minor accident. Immediately the kids are transported to a different bus. On that particular occasion, a robocall went out to all families letting them know that an accident had occurred and that a new bus was continuing to transport their children home. Again, on that particular occasion, we also did drug testing and alcohol testing to ensure that our driver had none of those issues. And again, at that point, there was no such concern and nothing founded following that test. So that's the only accident. There is some who have mentioned on Monday during the snowfall, the bus did get stuck in snow. The bus was attempting to make a turn in Durango West 1. Two students were coming up to the bus late. The driver stopped, and unfortunately stopped in snow, and the bus was unable to get traction, so they did have to dig out the bus. There was certainly nothing unusual about that in Colorado. Certainly a bus being as big as it is and as heavy as it is, if you stop in a wrong location, sometimes you do need to get some additional help. So those are the two instances that have occurred with this particular driver. And again, we'll continue to reevaluate how we consider minor traffic or minor accidents in the training process. Again, we felt like this particular driver, certainly with the record that he had, being 64 years old and no accidents in his background, I think a fender bender or a brush of a light pole, we felt like after 5 days of additional training and remediation that we were comfortable that he was a qualified driver.
On that note, Captain Driscoll said that the bus driver has been charged. Does that affect his CDL standing and his future employment?
Absolutely. That charge will prevent him from driving the bus, if that is the charge that remains. At this point, as I said, he is on leave. I'm not even sure that he would want to get back behind the wheel, to be real frank. Again, it's a challenging experience to go through, and again, this driver is very remorseful and certainly seeking some additional support himself following the accident. So again, I will wait and see where the charge goes.
Can you expand a little more on how you feel about requiring seatbelts in school buses?
Actually, I think, again, National Highway Safety Administration recommends against it because, again, if there were a fire on that bus and it required that the driver not only evacuate that bus but also unbuckle students who may be incapacitated, that could be a more tragic ending. The bus is built with such integrity that even in this case where the bus rolled, with the exception of some warping of the frame and doors that stuck a little, the bus maintained its integrity, and it's designed in such a way with padded seats to really cushion students. Again, to have 42 students in a bus that completely rolled over and to have the injuries that resulted was pretty amazing. And so I think with that, we're not in a position where we feel like seatbelts would have led to a different result.
Are you aware that the National Transportation Safety Commission changed its stance on seatbelts in school bus, the uses just this week?
No, I was not.
And
just this week.
Houston, Texas school system are now requiring seatbelts in all newly purchased buses. Is that something that you're going to then reevaluate?
We'll
And I'd like to
reevaluate.
see if we can have a law enforcement perspective as well too.
Sure. We'll reevaluate again. I think we still have a concern about in the event of needing to rapidly evacuate a bus, whether that's going to hinder that. And so we'll certainly reevaluate, knowing that that's occurred. Again, our stand has been based upon the prior recommendation, so I don't know if law enforcement wants to respond.
I likewise had not heard of that new development, so we're definitely going to have to look at that. And we usually follow what the federal guidelines are with regard to school bus safety, and whatever those recommendations that come down we'll comply with. We also do inspect school buses. We have a section of the State Patrol that does that exclusively. We go out and we inspect the buses on a regular basis. So, that's something that we would have to educate them on and look at it and once again deal with the school district on a response to that. So, but I was not aware of that. Thanks for bringing that up. Thank you.